Does the Bible say that Israel has been replaced with the church, or that the church is the new Israel? Let's find out by just simply reading the Bible. No commentary, no vain philosophy, no theology, just scripture. First, we have to see in the Bible where they get the idea that the church is the new Israel. And where they get it from is, I can't show you because it literally doesn't exist. The phrase new Israel on its own doesn't exist in any verse in the Bible. But on X, formerly known as Twitter, somebody that I follow, I don't know if he still follows me, his name is Calvin Robinson. If I'm not mistaken, he's a Catholic. And he responds to my claim with this, and he says, we are not children of Israel, we are Israel. The church is the new Israel. He responded to my claim that you can't be a child of Christ without being a child of Israel, per the Bible. And then he said, we are not children of Christ, we are children of God the Father, which, I mean, really I agree with, but when people say children of Christ or I'm a child of Christ, I'm referring to being children of God. Let's show in scripture how we know for a fact that the church is not the new Israel and that replacement theory is simply fake. For starters, you have to understand that even in Tanakh, or what most Christians call the Old Testament, you could still be grafted into Israel as a stranger. This isn't a new idea. Evidence is in Exodus chapter 12, verse 48. It says, but if a stranger resides with you and celebrates the Passover to the Lord, all of his males are to be circumcised, and then he shall come near to celebrate it, and he shall be like a native of the land. So this shows you that this stranger is no longer treated as a Gentile. He is now treated as a native, or AKA he is treated as Israel. And then if you go to a prophecy in Zechariah chapter 2, verse 11, it says, and many nations will join themselves to the Lord on that day and will become my people. Then I will dwell in your midst, and you will know that the Lord of armies has sent you to me. So this idea that people were never able to be grafted in or be considered Israel without being of the bloodline is really never been true in the Bible, ever. But now let me show you what really debunks the idea that the church replaced Israel or the church is the new Israel. Now, when I say this is not a debate about who are the true Israelites. This is about the biblical Israel. This is strictly from a scriptural perspective, using every word in a biblical perspective. Let's read Romans 11, just fly out the book to debunk this theory. I say then, God has not rejected his people, has he? Far from it, for I too am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Or do you not know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah? How he pleads with God against Israel. Lord, they have killed your prophets, they have torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. But what is the divine response to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So right here, Paul makes it clear that God has not rejected Israel. And that's Romans 11 verses 1 through 4. We're not even done. Let's go to verse 11 of Romans. I say then, they did not stumble so as to fall, did they? Far from it, but by their wrongdoing, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. The reason Gentiles even have salvation is to make the Jews jealous, and it says they have stumbled, but they have not failed. This is Paul's own words. So any replacement claim already cannot be true per scripture. Now, let's go to verse 17. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and became a partaker with them of the rich root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant towards the branches. But if you are arrogant, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. Not only is the church not the new Israel, not only is replacement theory fake, but right here it literally says you are grafted in among them, and you became a partaker with them, not instead of them, not in place of them. And then let's go to verse 22. See then the kindness and severity of God, to those who fail, severity, but to you, God's kindness, if you continue in his kindness, for otherwise you too will be cut off. So you can be a cut off branch, just like the Israelites that had their hearts hardened, if you don't continue in God's grace, which means to be obedient in the context. And then verse 25, for I do not want you, brothers and sisters, to be uninformed of this mystery, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, just as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion, he will remove ungodliness ungodliness from Jacob, this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. And this is quoting Isaiah chapter 59, verse 20, when it says a redeemer will come to Zion and to those in Jacob who turn from wrongdoing, declares the Lord. The deliverer is talking about Yeshua. And it says he will remove all ungodliness from Jacob. In context, this is talking about Israel by blood. That's part of the reason Yeshua came. And then lastly, verse 28, in relation to the gospel, they are enemies on your account. But in relation to God's choice, they are beloved on account of the Father. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. So it says that the gifts, which includes the promises that was given to the Israel of the blood, they're irrevocable. So replacement theory can't be true. And not only it says that in relation to God's choice, they are beloved on account of the fathers. So we know that these people are God's choice. Now we can debate about who the people are by blood, but to act like anything about Christianity has come to replace those people, that's just not biblical. So you can criticize, we can debate. When you get to the point where you really start hating Israel, at the end of the day, you're going to hate the Bible and you're going to hate Jesus himself. So again, no personal opinions, just scripture.